Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Eric Cave. I'm the Director of Next Gen Ministries for the Pacific Northwest Conference. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Michelle Sanchez. She is the Executive Minister for Make and Deepen Disciples of the Evangelical Covenant Church. And she's also the author of Color-Courageous Discipleship, Follow Jesus, Dismantle Racism, and Build Beloved Community. So, Michelle, please introduce yourself and describe your role with the Evangelical Covenant Church.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be with you today, Eric, and Pacific Northwest Conference. So believe it or not, I've been doing this role as executive minister for 7 years. It'll be going on 8 this year. And essentially, I cover all things related to discipleship and evangelism, as well as all of our generational ministries, including youth and children's ministry, and Crescendo, our senior adult ministry. Now, I would also say about my job, one of the things that I've loved in this role is looking at some of the most challenging issues that the church faces through a discipleship lens. And that's a lot of what I've been doing with this work too.
Wow. Good. Thanks for sharing that. Sounds exciting. So I'm holding here your new book, Speaking of Discipleship. What inspired you to write this?
Okay, so as I mentioned, I love looking at some of the hardest issues that we face through the lens of discipleship. And I felt like I wanted to offer something to the world in which we are making crystal clear connections between following Jesus and resisting racism. Now, you'll also, in this work, hear a lot of my own story. I have been a discipleship leader for years, obviously, but yet even I personally wasn't really making those connections between discipleship and race. So, like many other people, when I thought about race, I thought about it more like justice than discipleship. And it is a justice matter. Of course it is. Anything related to racism would be, but I think it actually goes much deeper than that. It's a discipleship matter. In 2020, after George Floyd was killed and all of my travel was canceled with the pandemic, I had plenty of time to reflect about what is the relevance of the work I do in Make and Deepen Disciples with these challenges that we face. And I began to ask new questions. Why does racial inequity continue to thrive in contexts like in the United States, where there are plenty, or supposedly plenty, of Christian disciples, right? What's missing? What's the hole in our discipleship? So again, I see that as, once again, we've looked at race, anything regarding racism, anti-racism, as a justice matter, but more fundamentally, it's about discipleship. And so that is what I explore in this book, all of the ways that that is true.
Thanks for sharing that. So I hear that our conference, the Pacific Northwest Conference, is actually featured in your book. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so that is why, especially why I'm so excited to be chatting with you, because I want everyone in the Pacific Northwest to know this. So one of the things in the book, I actually have a whole section on spiritual practices for racial formation, okay? And there's a whole chapter on pilgrimage, the power of pilgrimage to form us in Christ-centered racial discipleship. Now, when I do that, I feature 2 covenant experiences. One is Sankofa, and I do an interview with Debbie Blue, a former covenant executive, about her development of Sankofa. And that primarily is a racial discipleship pilgrimage about the Black-white experience in America. But the second experience that I feature is an interview with Greg Yee talking about Journey to Mosaic, which Journey to Mosaic essentially is like, well, I'll put it this way. Greg talked about how he went on Sankofa and loved it and really found it transformative as a discipleship experience, but then felt led to expand that experience to additional racial groups. And so that is how Journey to Mosaic was born. And it's happened in a few places, but obviously now is centered in the Pacific Northwest Conference. He talks about why he developed it and what kind of impact it's had. So I really want to encourage you all to check it out. And if I can, I'd love to read a quote from Greg.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So one of the questions I asked him is, why is pilgrimage a helpful discipleship practice for us? And he said, one reason is that it's embodied. I think we too often get stuck in our own minds, our own ideas, and our own history. Western civilization has always struggled with dualism, with the separation of our physicality from our spirituality and intellect. But we are holistic, embodied beings, and pilgrimage works because it is a deeply incarnational experience. Okay, so that's just a little blurb from your amazing conference superintendent, Greg Yee, and he has a lot more wisdom in there.
So you actually wrote like several books, right? There are several editions. I'm holding the student edition. So what led you to this approach to have several editions of your book?
Yeah, so it didn't start out that way, but it developed into this in part because, as I mentioned earlier, I do oversee ministry for all ages in my role. And so I'm constantly thinking about how to adapt things for all ages. And that is essentially what happened as I was developing this. I was thinking about the reality that if you want to do discipleship, it's better to do it as a community. It's better to do it as an intergenerational community. And what I would love to see is entire families or entire churches engaged in this work of color-courageous discipleship. So so there's the student edition, which you've got right there, and it is shorter and it has more jokes for anybody who's interested in that. So not just for young people, see. And also a children's book called God's Beloved Community, which really is, it's just crystallizing the core messages of the book.
Well, the student edition is great. I did notice that there's plenty of humor in there. There's pictures and there's think about it questions at the end of each chapter. So well done.
That's true. That you are right. There are also more pictures.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm a student at heart, I guess, because those are helpful for me to stay engaged. So I'm sure our students appreciate it too. So what is your hope for individuals or groups as they read your book?
Yeah, so my hope is that disciples of all ages would come to understand the ways in which dismantling racism and building beloved community are part of what it means to follow Jesus. These are not completely separate categories, separate classes, if you will, completely separate topics. No, holistic discipleship includes dismantling any systems of oppression, and especially racism. And there's lots in the Bible about this. So to help people to see that and to live into it really is my joy. I would love to see Christians leading in the pursuit of diversity and dismantling racism. I will also add this for covenant pastors and churches. As I've been writing and preparing these materials, I have covenant pastors in mind. That's actually who I'm primarily thinking about, covenant pastors and leaders. And so I would really love to see whole communities engage this. And I'm currently working on a suite of resources that will be launched at Midwinter. And it will be teaching outlines that you can use for sermons or classes. There'll be PowerPoint slides and graphics. There's a children's activity kit. Et cetera. There's going to be a lot of additional materials, and I'll be at Midwinter if you want to check it out, doing a workshop on it. But again, my hope is that we can really see our whole, not just individuals transformed, but communities transformed.
Oh, excellent. So where can we go if someone wants to get your book or if they want to learn more about it?
Well, see, covenant people are special. You can find me just by calling covenant offices. But in addition, I also have a website, colorcourageous.com. And so that'll go into, all about the books and materials that are coming. And another thing you could do, if you'd like, to receive updates about when these materials are available, you can text the word courage to 44144. You can text the word courage to 44144. That will sign you up for very infrequent updates. I say that because I have zero time to write emails to you, trust me. And you'll also receive a sneak preview of all 3 of the books when you do that, longer than you can find anywhere else.
Okay, well, I'll make sure to include those links, directions, even that texting thing. I'll include that in the text below this interview on our blog post. So well, thank you, Michelle. It's been a pleasure having you with us today.
Such a pleasure. Always love the Pacific Northwest Conference.
Oh, I messed it up.
Wow.